Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I worked for this marketing firm that specialized in corporate rebranding. The environment was toxic. My direct supervisor, Mr. Executive, was the worst kind of micromanager. Always hovering, always criticizing, always taking credit for other people's work while shifting blame when things went south. I spent 2 years there constantly stressed and undervalued. The final straw came when I pitched an innovative campaign for one of our biggest clients, a tech company. Mr. Executive initially dismissed my idea in our team meeting. Then a week later, I discovered he'd presented my exact proposal to the client as his own brainchild. When I confronted him about it, he claimed I had misremembered our previous conversation and that the idea had been his all along. That night, I went home and drafted my resignation letter. 2 weeks later, I was gone. I sent a professional but firm email announcing my departure to the entire department, including Mr. Executive and his boss. I received several nice messages from colleagues wishing me well, but nothing from him. Not surprising. Since then, I've built a successful freelance career. I work less, earn more, and haven't had a stress headache in years. I occasionally keep in touch with a few former co-workers, but I've mostly put that chapter behind me. Until today. There I was, sitting in my living room reading a book when my mobile phone rang. I was surprised to see the caller name that popped up on my screen, Mr. Executive. I hadn't heard from him since I left the company. Curiosity got the better of me. I answered the call and told him I was surprised to hear from him after all this time. His response was curt and immediate. He told me that I was on speaker and that the tech company client was there with him. He demanded an update from me on the website redesign project, his tone leaving no room for excuses. I was caught off guard by this strange request. I explained that I couldn't help him with that information and suggested he ask my old colleague from the design team instead. Before I could continue, he cut me off. He started ranting about how I didn't understand the urgency of the situation. He emphasized that the client was present and he needed an update immediately. He said my behavior was unacceptable, his voice taking on that familiar, angry edge. He continued his tirade, explaining that they had deadlines to meet and that the presentation was scheduled for the following week. He accused me of not submitting any progress reports and called my conduct unprofessional. He even threatened to speak with the department head about my behavior. I let him continue his rant for a few more sentences, each one more demanding than the last. It was clear he either genuinely didn't remember I no longer worked there, or this was some bizarre power play. Eventually, I interrupted him. I told him that not only would I not be giving him an update, I couldn't give him an update. I explained that I wasn't working on that project because I didn't even work for the company anymore. I reminded him that he had been copied on my resignation email. There was a long moment of silence. He asked with confusion what I was talking about. I said that I had resigned in 2022, almost 3 years ago. Another pause followed. Then I heard muffled conversation in the background. I could make out the client asking what was going on. Mr. Executive insisted that what I was saying was impossible. He claimed I was assigned to the project and that my name was on the team roster. I replied that someone must have made a mistake because I hadn't worked there in years. I suggested he check his email archives if he didn't believe me. More muffled conversation followed. The client sounded increasingly agitated, asking if this was some kind of joke. The client pointed out that Mr. Executive had claimed to have a dedicated team working on this for weeks. Mr. Executive tried to smooth things over, insisting there was just a misunderstanding and asking for a moment to sort things out. I stood my ground, saying there was no misunderstanding on my part. I repeated that I had left the company 3 years ago and had no idea why my name would be on any current project roster. I suggested he speak with his actual employees. The client sounded shocked, questioning how Mr. Executive could claim to have a full team on this project while putting people who don't even work there on the roster. Mr. Executive attempted to deny this, insisting they had a team working on it, but the client cut him off mid-sentence. The client said they had heard enough and would be reviewing their contract with the company. There was the sound of movement, maybe a door opening and closing. Then Mr. Executive's voice returned, no longer on speaker. He asked if I had any idea what I had just done. I replied that I hadn't done anything except answer my phone. I pointed out that he had called me, demanded work I couldn't possibly deliver, and lied to his client about who was working on their project. I said the situation was entirely his doing. He called my behavior completely unacceptable and started threatening to speak with someone about it. I cut him off by asking who exactly he would speak to, reminding him that I didn't work for him and hadn't for years. I made it clear that he had absolutely no authority over me. It was satisfying to put the phone down on this guy. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a text from him saying this wasn't over. I blocked his number and went back to my book. 20 minutes later, I got an email from my old colleague from the design team. The office was in chaos. Mr. Executive had been claiming to have a team of 6 people working on the tech company project, but in reality, he'd only assigned it to one junior designer who had been struggling to keep up. He'd been padding the team roster with former employees' names to justify the project timeline and budget to the client. The client had walked out and called the company's CEO directly. My former colleague ended the email with a thank you for the entertainment, adding that everyone had been waiting for someone to expose Mr. Executive for years. I smiled and closed my laptop. I've been working in security for about 7 years now, splitting my time between being a club bouncer on weekends and regular security detail during the week. My size has made me perfect for the job. I've carried extra weight since high school, but it gives me presence, which is half the battle in security work. People think twice before causing trouble when they see someone my size standing guard. The job exposes me to all sorts of people, including plenty of entitled ones who think security guards exist solely to serve their random needs. But on this night, I encountered one of the worst. I was doing mobile checks across the city, a night shift that had me driving to different client locations to ensure everything was secure. Around 3 a.m., I was running on fumes, both my car and myself. My gas gauge was flirting with empty, and I needed coffee badly if I was going to make it through the rest of my shift. I also needed cash. My boss prefers reimbursing expenses in cash, says it means less paperwork for him, so I pulled into a bank parking lot to use the ATM. Nothing unusual about that, even at 3 a.m. What was unusual was the van parked directly in front of the bank entrance. Still, I didn't think much of it and headed inside to withdraw some money. When I came back out, coffee and gas station snacks were next on my mental checklist. That's when I heard it. A woman was yelling at me from across the parking lot, demanding that I help her start her van. I could see her leaning against the vehicle, waving at me. I had a full night of security checks ahead and zero time to play mechanic for a stranger. I called back to her, explaining that I couldn't help but offering to call a tow truck for her. She wasn't happy with this. She looked at my uniform and shouted back that since I was security, I should help her, and told me to come over to her. Her words were slurred, which put me on alert. I figured I should check if she needed medical help, so I walked over, keeping my distance. The smell hit me before I got close. If you've ever worked at a bar, you know that smell of the bar mat at closing time, where all the spilled drinks have collected throughout the night. That's what she smelled like. She wasn't just tipsy, she was drenched in alcohol. I told her that I didn't work at the bank but offered to call either a tow truck or a cab for her. That's when she went wild. She started hurling insults, calling me useless and a stupid rent-a-cop. I tried to speak, but she continued, moving on to personal attacks about my weight, calling me a fat slob. She pointed at my stomach as she spoke, nearly losing her balance. She grabbed the van to steady herself, showing me she was leaning on it for support. I suggested that I should call someone who could help her get home safely. She said no, insisting that she didn't need my help, just needed her van to start. I began walking toward my car, telling her that I was going to call someone who could help with the van. As I walked away, she kept insulting me, her speech becoming jumbled. Once I got to my car, I didn't call a tow truck. I called 911. I told the dispatcher about the drunk woman trying to drive, showing aggressive behavior. While waiting for them to arrive, I watched her from my car. She tried the van door several times, fumbling with her keys but never getting in. 5 minutes later, two patrol cars pulled into the parking lot. One of the officers was an old friend of my dad's, Officer Johnson, and the other was Mike, who played football with me in high school. We weren't close back then. He was the quarterback while I was just a lineman, but we recognized each other. I greeted them and thanked them for coming quickly. I then told them what happened with the woman. They nodded and walked over to her. From where I was, I could see her trying to act sober when she saw they were police officers. Impossible in her state. They ran her through a sobriety test, which she failed badly. Even standing on one foot was beyond her. Then came the breathalyzer. After they finished, Mike walked back over to me, shaking his head. He told me that she had blown almost 4 times the legal limit and was being charged with trying to drive while drunk. He added that if she'd just let me call a cab, she could have gone home without charges, but now she was spending the night in jail and facing big problems. The woman looked at me from the back of the patrol car as they got ready to leave. I felt a little bad for her. The legal troubles would be big, but then again, she was ready to drive while very drunk. Someone that drunk behind the wheel is like a weapon on wheels. I checked my watch. The whole thing had taken about 20 minutes of my shift, and I still needed coffee and gas. As the patrol cars left, I got back in my car and headed to the nearest gas station, thinking about how differently things could have gone if she'd just accepted help instead of demanding it. The security business shows you all kinds of people, but entitled drunks are among the most difficult. At least this one wouldn't be on the road that night, putting herself and others in danger, and I had a story to tell my co-workers later. I worked at a family-owned hardware store throughout high school and university. This gave me skills that most people don't have. Even though I left that job years ago, I still know my way around plumbing supplies, electrical components, and pretty much everything else you'd find in a hardware store. This happened in Australia just before our first lockdown when masks were mandatory in retail stores. I needed some plumbing supplies for a project at home, so I headed to one of those big box hardware stores on a Saturday morning. If you've been to one of these places, you know the staff is limited. They're mostly there to stock shelves and work the registers. The few experienced employees who actually know their stuff are always busy helping customers. I found myself in the plumbing aisle, one of the most intimidating sections for most people. It's filled with copper pipes, tap fittings, toilet parts, and 1,000 other items that look identical to the untrained eye. I've been there about 20 minutes, gathering what I needed, when I noticed an older gentleman looking confused. He caught my eye and waved me over. I could tell he was struggling with something, so I walked over to help. He needed parts for a leaky toilet cistern. I grabbed exactly what he needed and told him how to install it. He thanked me and was about to leave when another elderly man approached, asking if I could help him too. This second gentleman needed tap washers. I showed him the direct replacements, but then recommended a ceramic fitting that would eliminate the need for future replacements. I told him that while the ceramic fittings cost more upfront, he'd never have to replace them again. The man looked hesitant when he saw the price tag. He said they were expensive compared to the regular washers. I told him that with his senior's discount, he'd save money in the long run and wouldn't have to deal with this problem again. After thinking about it, he agreed to take my advice and buy the ceramic fitting. I was feeling good about helping these guys out. Once a salesman, always a salesman. As I was about to walk away with the elderly gentleman, I felt someone behind me. Before I could turn around, a shrill voice pierced my ears. A middle-aged woman suddenly demanded my attention, ordering me to get her the items on her list. I turned to see her shoving a piece of paper in my face. She was dumpy, with big, bushy brown hair and too much makeup. If she had approached me politely, I would have happily helped her like I did with the elderly men. But her attitude? No way. I smiled and told her that I didn't work at the store, pointing at my blue singlet and blue cargo shorts with pockets full of plumbing products. The store employees wore red and green uniforms. The woman's face got angry. She said I was lying, pointing out that I had just helped the elderly man, so I must work there. I repeated that I didn't work there and offered to let someone at the counter know she needed help. Then I tried to leave. I felt her hand grab my shoulder, but I quickly moved away. She told me not to walk away from her. I repeated once more that I didn't work there and would let the counter know she needed help. Then I walked away quickly with the elderly gentleman. This woman wasn't giving up. She followed us screaming, calling me racist names and claiming I was sexist, among other things. I tried to ignore her, which only made her angrier. She tried to grab me a couple more times, but I moved away. During one of these attempts, she lost her footing and tripped, giving me a chance to put some distance between us, but I could still hear her behind me, screaming. Just as I thought I might need to run for the exit, a staff member stopped her. The employee asked the woman to stop screaming. The woman pointed at me and said I was rude to her, called me racist, and claimed I had hit her. When she mentioned assault, I knew the situation had gotten serious. The staff member turned to me and rolled her eyes. I told the elderly gentleman that he might want to wait since this was going to take a while. He said it was fine and that I would need a witness. Security was called and I talked to the manager, telling her what happened. The elderly man confirmed my story. I reminded the manager about the security cameras all around the store, and she said she would tell the angry woman about them. The police were called anyway. There was already a patrol car in the parking lot. They'd just finished their lunch. The officers took all three of us, me, the elderly gentleman, and the woman, to different areas for interviews. I waited in the office for about 1 hour. Finally, the officers returned, saying they'd looked at the security footage. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, I just wanted to get my supplies and go home. They let me go, and the manager walked me to the checkout. She told me that the woman was getting a lifetime ban, something they didn't do often. I paid for my plumbing supplies, even getting a trade discount. As I headed toward the exit, I saw the elderly gentleman sitting on a bench. He stood up when he saw me and asked if I wanted a sausage. We both laughed and enjoyed sausages with onions and cokes from the weekend sausage sizzle outside the store. I offered to come over and fit the tap washers for him, and we set up a time for the next morning. It turned out he only lived a street away from me. As I was getting into my car, I saw the woman coming out of the store with the police and the manager. She looked upset, though at least she wasn't in handcuffs. I drove by slowly, rolled down my window, and told her that she should check out the Trade Plumbing Supplies store across the road. I said that if she went there and didn't act like a witch, they would have everything on her list. I drive trucks for a living. The open road, different cities every week, and freedom. That's why I like this job. But it has challenges. One challenge is finding safe parking when you need rest. Last night, planning ahead paid off, but not how I thought. I had a late delivery, so I got to this truck stop around 3:30 in the afternoon. This stop has a reserved section, about 15 to 20 spaces where you pay $17 for a spot for 24 hours. It's a good deal compared to places charging $25 or more. I went inside to pay and talked to the manager. I told her I needed a spot for the night, mentioning I had a delivery later so I'd leave for a few hours, then come back. The manager said that was fine. My reservation would start at 4 p.m. until 3 p.m. tomorrow. She said when I left, she'd mark my spot as sold but empty so nobody else would get it. I paid my $17, got my receipt, and parked in spot number 8. Then I rested before my delivery. Around 11:15 p.m. I left for my delivery. What should have been quick turned into hours of paperwork and waiting. I didn't finish until 2:30 a.m. I was tired and just wanted to sleep in my spot. But when I got back, all reserved spots were full, including mine. Someone took my paid spot while I was gone. Tired, I parked at the fuel island and called the manager. I said I was from spot number 8 and told her all reserved spots were full, including mine. The manager checked records and said I was right. She said she'd send someone to check. 5 minutes later, an employee came with a clipboard and checked all trucks in the reserved section. He stopped at a truck with a bright orange trailer. You probably know the company. The employee knocked on the truck door. I rolled down my window to listen. The employee told the driver this was reserved parking, saying records showed he hadn't paid and the spot belonged to another driver. I couldn't hear his answer but saw him in the doorway. He had a drink in one hand and something for smoking in the other. Not cigarettes. The employee told him to move now or they'd call a tow truck and police. The driver started yelling. He refused to move, asking if the employee knew how long he'd been driving. He said he was staying there and told the employee to bother someone else. Then he slammed the door. The employee came back and told me he was calling police and a tow truck. He said this happens sometimes but promised they'd get my spot. 20 minutes later, police arrived. The employee told them what happened and they went to the truck. When the driver opened his door, I could see he was in trouble. I used to work for that company and know their rules. Drivers can't have alcohol in the cab. They can only have cigarettes, cigars, and lighters for smoking. And they definitely can't have guns, especially loaded ones. This driver had everything: alcohol, illegal smoking stuff, and from what I saw when police searched, a gun. There were also bags of stuff probably not from a doctor. The police handcuffed him and took him away. A tow truck came and took his truck. After things calmed down, the manager came to talk to me. She said sorry and told me my spot was clear. She extended my reservation until 5 p.m. tomorrow for the trouble. I thanked her. After parking, I called someone I knew at that trucking company, the safety director. I said I was a former driver and told her one of their trucks was being taken and their driver was arrested. When she asked what happened, I told her about the reserved spot, him refusing to move, and what police found. The safety director thanked me, saying this was against company rules. She said he'd lose his job, especially for having alcohol and illegal stuff in the company truck. I said I thought she should know, and she thanked me for calling, saying they'd handle it. I finally slept around 4 a.m. When I woke up later, the orange trailer was gone, and a new company truck had come for it. That driver learned about respecting reserved parking. He tried saving $17 and lost his job, got arrested, and probably lost his license. All because he wouldn't park in the free section or pay like everyone else. People should think before making such choices. In this job, your license is your living. Risking it over parking, then making it worse with banned items, that's not just entitled, it's career suicide. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.